Shalom. Today's daf Yomi is Sanhedrin daf Ayin Dalet Sanhedrin 74, and today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chaylim. It's all for Shliim and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Today's daf is being in advance of the Shabbos Kodesh. It's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Adar, and as we'll see, our daf relates to the month of Adar, so it's very appropriate. So we're going to start on the 74a. The daf is dedicated for a Shemir for the Chayalim, it's all for the Shuyim and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Starts by recording the position of Rabbi Yonasan ben Shol, 3 lines from the top. Rabbi Yonasan ben Shol Omer, Rodev Shaya, Rodev Acha Chavero Hargo. Let's say there is somebody who's running after his friend to kill him, and he can save him. Somebody else can save him or it's not 100% clear from the brisa that the person can be saved by knocking out one of his limbs. Well, he'd seal, and he doesn't. Instead, he kills the person. He's going to be killed for that. And the Gemara asks, "My time of Rabbi Yonasan. What's the reason for Rabbi Yonasan ben Shol that if somebody could save somebody by knocking out one of his limbs, but instead he kills him, he's liable for killing him? What's the reason? Because it says in the pasuk in Exodus 21, that if two men are fighting together, and so under that basis, that where are you allowed to kill him? That if the point is that if they're fighting in a manner in which they're trying to kill each other. And then the pasuk says, if you read the whole pasuk, two people are fighting and they strike a woman who's pregnant, and then she miscarries, and under those circumstances, that after she miscarries, it says the person he tried to kill, there was no fatality. I know she'll be punished. So then he has to pay under those circumstances. So the Gemara says that we're talking about a case, we're talking about a case that he was intending to kill his friend and he struck the woman. That's what the pasuk is referring to. That if they will die, if he will kill a person, he'll have a soul for a soul. And still the Torah says that if there will not fatality, that he will be punished. Now, if you want to say that if you could save him by one of his limbs, that he would not be allowed to kill him. That's the case. That's the case where he'll be punished. What's the case? If he's able to save him by one of his limbs. A case where he was able to save him with one of his limbs. And yet he didn't save him with one of his limbs. So therefore he's going to be liable. But if you say that even if he could save him with one of his limbs, he's still allowed to kill him. Well, if that's the case, how can you find the circumstance where he's going to be? How can you find the circumstance where he's going to be killed? So let's go back and repeat this again. So if you say, like Rabbi Yonasan ben Shol says, that if you're able to save him with one of his limbs, then you're not allowed to kill him. So under those circumstances, then we can find the case in which that person who causes the person to miscarry is going to be punished, that he has to pay. The case in the Torah is talking about a case where he could have knocked out his limbs, and so therefore he wasn't allowed to kill him. So since he was not able to kill him, therefore he doesn't have to pay. He doesn't have to pay for the monetary damages for the miscarriage because he was chayav misa under those circumstances. And so therefore, since he wasn't liable for execution, so therefore he has to pay for the miscarriage. But if you say that if the person is able to save the person with one of his limbs, so you're still able to kill him, then the person is chayav misa, the person who's the attacker is chayav misa. So if that's the case, how could it be the case that he's responsible for causing the miscarriage, which is a monetary payment? How can you say that the person who caused the miscarriage is punished because he was liable for misa? And so therefore, it must be that Rabbi Yonasan ben Shol was correct that if a person is not liable to execution, if you could stop him from committing the execution just by hurting him. So that's the proof for Rabbi Yonasan ben Shaul. So the Gemara says, no, no, maybe this case is totally different. Maybe the person who is doing the attack is liable for death against the person he's fighting, but he has to pay the penalty to the woman. And so maybe that's what it's talking about. It's two separate reasons. So for pursuing the person who was trying, he is liable for death, like Rabbi Yonasan ben Shaul says, but his monetary payment goes to the woman. The Gemara says, no, it doesn't matter. Even though he'd be liable for payment for the woman and liable for death for killing the other person, he would have been exempt from having to pay the woman because the two penalties the two acts were happening simultaneously. To Amar Rava, because Rava said, Rodev Shaya Rodev Achar Chavero. Let's say somebody is running after his friend to kill him, and the person who was running after somebody to kill him broke the utensils when he was pursuing him. Whether they belong to those utensils belong to the person he was running after, or whether they belong to anybody else. Potter, the person who's running after, is going to be exempt from having to pay. My time, the reason why he's exempt is because he's liable for death, and we have a principle: if you a more severe penalty. So the Gemara says, and so therefore he's exempt. So we see in this case he should have been exempt. Unless if he was Chayav Misa, unless we say like Rabbi Yonasan ben Shaul. And Gemara says, but maybe not. And Gemara continues, let's say the person who is being pursued breaks the utensils of the pursuer, Potter, then he's going to be exempt from having to pay him because he was running after him. But if he broke somebody else, then he's liable. So Rodev Potter, why if the person is running after him and he breaks his utensils, is he exempt? So because since he's liable to death, the money shouldn't be more precious than the body. So since he's liable to death, he's also doesn't have a claim for any money that the pursuer loses because he's trying to kill him. Shakol Adam Chayev. Because why if he breaks somebody else's money, does he have to pay? Because he saved himself for somebody else's property and you're liable to pay that person. So then the Gemara says, and if somebody was pursuing a pursuer, and he wants to prevent him from committing murder, basically, he was running after a Rodef in order to kill him. Vishiba came, and he broke some vessels. Bein shal Rodef, bein shal Nirdorf, bein shal Kol Adam. Whether it's a Rodef or Nirdorf or anybody else, Potter, he's exempt. Why? Why is he not? Why does he not have to pay a third party if somebody's trying to stop a murder and he breaks somebody else's utensils? Why does he not have to pay? So the Gemara says, if not, technically speaking, if A is trying to kill B and C runs after A to stop him, and C breaks D's property, technically speaking, C should be responsible to pay D's property. But we're not going to make him responsible. Because if you won't say that, because then everybody would say, well, nobody would get involved. I don't want to become liable to pay. I can have exposure. And so therefore, we're going to say under those circumstances, everybody is going to be, we're going to say under those circumstances that he's potter. So then the Gemara says, but if somebody is running after an animal to assault the animal, then you're not allowed to save his life by killing him. Tanya, the Gemara says in a brayso, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai actually, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says that somebody who's rushing after to worship idolatry, you're allowed to kill him to stop him from violating the sin. Mikal v'chomer, and we learn it out from a logical argument. Just like if basically if a person is just running after to assault a person, which will cause a defect on him, a sexual assault against him, which is the defect. You're allowed to kill the person who's trying to sexually assault another person. So too, Pegam Gavol, for sure, if he's going to do an assault against God, for sure you should be able to kill him to stop him from assaulting against God. The Gemara says we don't see. That's Shemai's logic, but the Gemara asks, we punish somebody from a Kal v'chomer, so we shouldn't be able to apply that logic. So Rabbi Shimon is of the position, because of our own Shemin Adin. Rabbi Shimon is of the position that we do punish somebody from a Kal v'chomer. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Hamachal as Shabbos nitin latzil b'nafsho. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Shimon Chai, says that if somebody is about to desecrate Shabbos, Rahman al another person is allowed to kill him to save him from violating the Shabbos. Well, he holds like his father, who says the Amar On Shimon Adin, who says you can't punish somebody from a Kal V'chomer. And he learns out Shabbos by making a comparison to idolatry. So he says, therefore, if you see something about to violate Shabbos, you're allowed to kill him. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Tzadok, Nimnu v'gam Balios base Nitzah. They took a vote in the attic of Nitzah's house in Lud, and they said, Kol Avera Shabbat Torah, Omer L'Adam Avor V'al Tarog. If all the Averos of the Torah, if they said, they took a vote in the attic and they said all the sins of the Torah, if a person says violate them and or otherwise you're going to be killed. Yavor v'al and all of them, a person should violate them and not be killed, with the exception of the big three. With the exception of idolatry, adultery, or sexual sins and murder. Now, avodas kochavim. Well, so the Gemara says avodas kochavim, you're not allowed to violate. You should allow yourself to be killed. Vatanya Amar Bishmal Minayin Shem Amar Adam Avod Avodas kochavim v'al te'areg. How do we know the person to another person worship idolatry or otherwise you'll be killed? Rabbi Shmuel says, how do you know you should worship and not be killed? Tamil Omer v'chai b'hem. Says the pasuk, you should live by them, sheyamus b'hem, and not die by them. Yachal feel b'far hasi. I might think even in public. Tamil Omer v'lo t'chalu Hashem kodshi. Should not desecrate my name. V'niktashti, and I should be consecrated. And so therefore we see from here that it's only in public that you should give up your life rather than worshiping idolatry, but in private you should worship idolatry rather than give up your life. So the Gemara says, no, Inu da Amar, the people in Lud, where they took the vote, they held like Rabbi, like Inu da Amar, Rabbi Elazar. So the position of Lud, they held like Rabbi Elazar, who said, Elazar Omer, v'ahavtas Hashem l'kecha b'chol modecha. Shalav Hashem your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. Never b'chol nafshcha. It says with all your soul, and never b'chol modecha. Why did it say with all your might? Never b'chol modecha. It says with all your might. Never b'chol nafshcha. Why did it say with all your soul? So in Yeshcha Adam shegufo chavu av nimamono. I said there's some people who like their body more than their money. Serve God with all your soul. There's some people whose money is more precious than their body. Therefore, that's all your might. So, and in Gilui Arayat, so that's how you know you should give up. They say you give up your life rather than worship idolatry. And Gilui Arayat with shvichas damim. How do I know sexual sins and murder? Give up your life. Could the Rabbi, like Rabbi taught Tanya, Rabbi Omer Kasher Yakum Ish Al Re'el V'Ratzcho. Nefesh Ken Hadavar. It's just like a person will rise up over his friend to kill him. So is this matter? What are we learning about this case of a sexual assault from a murderer? We were coming to learn something instead it teaches something. We're going to compare the Rotseach to the woman who is betrothed, who is assaulted. Just like the Namarasa, you could kill the person who's trying to assault or so to the murder you could kill him to save and we also compare Namarasa to a murderer. Just like a murderer should allow himself to be killed before killing somebody else. So to them Namarasa she should allow herself to be killed and not commit a sexual sin. And how do we know that a person is not allowed to kill somebody? If you say to somebody, kill this person or else I'm going to kill you, how do you know you're not allowed to kill somebody? Gemara says this is logic. Svarahu, it's just a logic. There was a person who came before Rabbah, and he said, Amrle Mare Durai. He said, the master of my city, the duke of my city, who's not Jewish, said to me, Zil Katle Lapanya, go kill this person. So they came to Rabbi, he said, the head of the town said, I have to kill this person or else he's going to kill me. So Rabbi said to him, allow yourself to be killed and do not kill this other person. Now, throughout the rest of the Shas, this is found as Rava. Here it's called Rabba, but regardless, so he said, and the logic was, who says that your blood is redder than his? Maybe his blood is redder than yours, so you have no right to kill him. He says, he says, this was only taught This was only taught during the time of the decree of the king. So this was only taught where it was not a time of the decree of the king, that these are the only three sins you have to give up your life for: murder, sexual sins, and idolatry. But if it's a time of the decree of the king, even if it's a small mitzvah, a lesser mitzvah, then you have to give up your life rather than violate it. And Rashi explains, we don't want the idolaters to become accustomed to weaken the hearts of the Jewish people in manner. Even give up a small, even do not violate a small mitzvah. And then Rabbi Yochanan said, even if it's not a time of the decree of the king, when did they say there are only three sins that you have to give up your life for? That's when it is in private, but if it's in public, I feel mitzvah even a minor mitzvah, you have to allow yourself to be killed. And my mitzvah call, what's a minor mitzvah that you have to give up your life for rather than be killed? Even to not change the shoelaces of your shoe. Meaning it's not even a mitzvah. Rashi explains this is the strap of your shoe. And if the idolaters typically tie it one way and the Jew ties it another way, and so therefore, meaning to say the way of the Jews is to be more modest, even this change is not an actual mitzvah. Rashi says, it's just the custom. You have to sanctify God's name in front of his fellow Jews, and so that's what it means. If they ask you in public even to go against the custom of the Jew, you can't even do that. So the Gemara says, "V'kama parasi." What's considered public? Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, ein parasi pekusa me'asar b'nei adam, in front of 10 people. Shita. It's obvious Yisraelim bein, and it's obvious that we require Jews because it says that the public has to be made up of Jews in order for you to be considered parasi and give up your life rather than violate. Because it says, "V'nikdashti b'soch b'nei Yisrael." Because it says, "I must be sanctified amongst the children of Israel." So by Rabbi Yirmiyah, I would say there are 9 Jews and 1 non-Jew there. So Tashma, Tani Rabbi Yani, Achua de Rabbi Achia Barava, Asi Toch Toch. We're going to compare the words. It says Toch Toch. Now we need 10 Jews, 10, and they all need to be Jewish. How do we say this? Ksiv Hachon Estakti Nifkadashti V'Soch B'nei Yisrael. Ksiv Hasam, and it says by Korach Ibadol Mitoch Ha'ida is those. Mawa Wana Asar V'Kol Yisrael. Just like by Korach, they were all Jewish. So too, Afghan Asar V'Kol Yisrael. So now the Gemara, so it has to be all Jews. So the Gemara asked the question. Well, Esther, so this is Rosh Chodesh Adar, the first day of the month of Adar. And the Gemara asked the question from Esther. How come Esther didn't give up her life? Esther Fares Hava. And what was the problem? Rashi said she was with an idolater and she didn't allow herself to be killed. So how could Esther have been with Achashverosh? So the Gemara says, Esther Fares Yavis. The Gemara says, Amrabai Esther Karka Oam Haisa. Esther was passive. She didn't do any action. She was just like the ground, meaning to say, he did an action on her. She didn't do anything. So that's first answer. Rava said that this case is different because the idolater was not intending to cause her to violate her faith. He just wanted to get his own personal benefit. And so therefore, it's not a desecration of his name to be killed for that. According to this opinion, we have to say Esther was not married to Mordechai because therefore it was not one of the big 3 sins because she wasn't committing a riot. She was a penuia. She was unmarried. So that's what you have to say according to this approach. Since it wasn't to cause her to violate the faith, it was just to get his own benefit. Therefore, she was allowed to commit the sin. Because if you're not going to say that, these copper utensils that you put coals in them, and the Persians would come along and take them on their table to warm themselves for their idolatry. How would we give it to them? So we say it wasn't part of their worship. They were just doing it for their own personal benefit, and so therefore we're allowed to give it to them. Rava follows his logic. a non-Jew, idolater, who says to a Jew, cut down this grass on Shabbos to feed it to my animal, and otherwise I'm going to kill you. Cut it down and don't be killed. But if he says throw it into the river, it's obviously trying to cause him to violate his faith. Then allow yourself. Then we're going to say, so under those circumstances where he says to throw it into, the river, but if he says to throw it into the river, then should allow himself to be killed and not cut it down, because clearly there it's not for his own benefit, but it's to cause the Jew to be punished. So the Gemara says, "My time, because there he just wants the Jew to violate it." So now the Gemara asks another question. Is it Noah commanded to sanctify God's name, or is he not? Meaning to say, if they told the no violate one of the 7 laws, the 7 Noahide laws, or maybe one of the big 3 laws of idolatry, adultery, and murder, are you required to give up your life? So it's a question, which one of the laws they're talking about? Is it one of the big 3, which a Jew has to give up his life, or even any of the 7 Noahide laws? So it says Abai says there's 7 Noahide laws, and if they also have to sanctify God's name, so there'd never be 8. So the Gemara says, no, it means these 7 and all things that are associated to them. So we see that there are many, many laws, and not just 7. They have to do everything associated with it. We'll stop here. This is the Daf Yomi for Shabbos or Chodesh Purim. Shkoyach.